location, this is in Eukaryota in the Plantae. It's going to be in the subkingdom Plantae, phylum Chlorophyta, so that's the green algae. Subphyla is Chlorophytina. Class is Olophyceae, which is the same class as Ola, the green algae. It's in Bryopsidalis, and the family is Caulerpaceae. So there are 163 names in algae base. 97 of those are currently accepted as taxonomical units. And the type species is going to be Caulerpa prolifera. And then we have 13 different species in Hawaii. Most of them aren't very common, so there's a couple in our algae book that are more common. And just a picture here, there's a lot of diversity in the shape of the algae. So a couple of the Hawaiian species, we have Caulerpa racemosa as well as Caulerpa webiana. So these ones are not so branch-like, so they're a little bit smaller, closer to ground. This racemosa can be either like round or it can have kind of like a cup shape. So some important features is this is one of the acellular plants, so it is only one cell. It is going to have multiple nucleuses though to kind of compensate for the fact that these cells get so large. So they have that siphonous structure where it's kind of like a living garden hose, where most of the plant is actually just that vacuole that's full of kind of water and polysaccharides. So then you have kind of the runners, they've called stolons, which kind of spread it out over vast areas of the reef. So you can have one part in an area with high water flow and one part in like a crevice or something which doesn't. So it can have a little bit of a different morphology depending on where it is on the reef. And then these also have colorless rhizoids which attach it. And then you have the erect fronds with the various shapes that I mentioned. It's also uniaxial, so this is coming from one cell that's growing at the tip. It also has holocarpic reproduction and with gametic meiosis. So that is kind of the life history that we have as humans, where there's a single diploid entity which through meiosis produces gametes which fuse to form another diploid entity. So the holocarpic reproduction is where all of the energy, nutrients, etc. in the adult plant go into the gametes. And after those are released, that adult actually dies. And so it's giving all the energy to that next generation. And so here we have a little bit of the structure. Here are the rhizoids as well as the fronds. And then if you were to take like a section of this, you have these the laterals, which are giving it support, as well as the horizontals. And there's a cross section of what that would look like. So in class, Dr. Smith talked a lot about Caulerpa taxifolia, which has invaded the Mediterranean, but also Caulerpa racemosa has invaded there as well. So this is native to Southwest Australia. So they mentioned in the article that I read that they're not certain where it came from. Could be aquarium trade, ballast water, etc., the usual kind of introductions. So they did find that there's high intra-population genetic variability. So these are actually sexually reproducing, unlike the taxifolia that we saw, which has only been seen with male gametes. They found both female and male gametes, so they are producing sexually. So it was first seen in Libya in 1990, and in 17 years it spread to 12 different countries, as well as all the major islands, as well as the Canary Islands, which are out here. So unlike the taxifolia, this hasn't gotten nearly as much public attention, and so there aren't very many studies that have really quantified where it is. And so this is one of the pictures where studies have been located, but we don't have an actual estimate of cover yet. They also found that there is changes in seasonality of this algae and how it grows. So we have like Stalin link. This was from France, and then just the biomass in France as well. So you're seeing a peak in early to late summer. And then in this one is in Italy, where you're seeing an earlier peak in the Stalin growth. So just lastly, this has been a really big problem because in its native range, it only goes down to 6 meters, whereas in the Mediterranean, we're finding it all the way down to 70 meters. So that's a huge expansion. It's also taking up different locations and habitats. So usually this would have been kind of limited in its growth, whereas in the Mediterranean, it's kind of taking over vast areas. So it's considered a habitat modifier. They form these dense mats, which is trapping a lot of sedimentation and then kind of smothering the algae that's underneath it. And so this is just a quick comparison of between the Taxifolia and the Racemosa. So you're seeing that there is a lot of the Taxifolia biomass, but when you're looking down here with the spread and the stallen growth and length, it's all the Racemosa, which is gonna outpeak the other one. So there's kind of this trade-off of, should we be paying more attention to this as a Caulerpa species instead of just focusing on Caulerpa taxifolia that's in there? So this is just an area where we need a lot more study to understand what's happening. So there are my references. Do you guys have any questions?